What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to FudgeMuppet. This is the Elder Scrolls podcast. I'm Scott here with Michael and Drew as always, and today we are diving into a discussion all about the Thieves Guild. We're going to be talking broad strokes. We're going to be talking about all the games and just sort of the characters and the little metaphysical bits and pieces here and there. So where would you guys like to start?
Well, I guess the first thing that's good to say is that, like, the Thieves Guild aren't all one big group like the Dark Brotherhood tends to be. You know, the Dark Brotherhood, they have their little hideouts everywhere and there's communication between each other.
They're decentralized.
Well, I mean, kind of. Anyway.
Well, they don't have a central authority.
Yeah, they don't.
Like it's... Yeah.
And the Thieves Guild, though, are very, like, spread out, and they don't really, like, seem to have, like, a strong connection to each other. Like, each guild is very different. Like, some of them have their own different ways of doing things, or slightly different rules, or different people that they look up to, and completely different attitudes towards thieving. You know, some may be more like that Robin Hood, steal from the rich and give to the poor. Others can be a little bit more like, I just want a quick buck, however I do it, I don't care, I'm a crim.
I guess the closest things you can get to sort of a unifying feature is, A, they're thieves, and they're organized bunch of thieves, but the other thing is sort of Nocturnal. They're the patron of thieves and so on. So you'll see her, you know, with the grey cowl of Nocturnal, she's involved there, but she's not even like, and it's, you know, they'll go like shadow hide you and things like that, and there's sort of like the whole deal with the Twilight Sepulchre and the Nightingales and so on, but it's not necessary. It's like Thieves Guilds can operate, because I'm pretty sure the one in Abba's Landing doesn't have anything explicitly to do with Nocturnal like that. And I don't know if the case, and I don't think that's the case in Morrowind either.
Yeah. It's a weird thing having an organization of individualists, because at the end of the day, for the most part, they care about themselves, and that's why it does vary how much they get into the religious aspects. Because really, the religious aspects, as you see with the Nightingales and whatnot, it's kind of unusual. But
I wonder if an reasonable comparison is almost kind of like a workers' union, in the way that they're all thieves, they're all there for their, you know, obviously they, you know, work for themselves. They're not like part of a faction, as much as a lot of them, you know, they have their individual interests, they'll go off doing their own things, but they mutually benefit from having shared resources, shared connections, and they do have like a little bit of a, depending on the one thing for Nocturnal. But it's
also interesting because in a way, you know, say the government of a certain city or province can actually benefit from their existence as well, because they tend to have the rule to, you know, not rob from the poor, and they don't really like competitors or their own members going rogue, so to speak. So in a way, that can almost decrease violent crime, because you know, like if they're very professional about it and they only want to steal from people with a lot of money and they don't want to harm anyone in the process, you're not going to get as many, like, you know, bloody muggings in the street and things like that.
That was a major shift, and this is another example of how they can be different. But in Oblivion, it was a really strict sort of like explicit, we're not the Dark Brotherhood, we don't do killing, you'll be punished for killing. Whereas it's a similar-ish thing in the Skyrim's Thieves Guild, but like one of your first missions is like, punch the hell out of someone until they give you the goods. Like, it's a bit more thuggish in Skyrim and so on. I guess, you know.
And I would say it's a lot more desperate as well. Like, I mean, just in their situation. I'm not saying, oh, you can't blame them, it's okay. But I'm saying, as a Thieves Guild, if they are to survive, they're in, you know, they're quite run down at the start of their plotline in Skyrim. They kind of have to do whatever it takes. But yeah, I definitely agree that they are, you know, part of the ecosystem, that they're helpful to the society, versus the alternative of having lots of different thieving groups. And there's two reasons. One, we kind of already touched on, which is like the moral aspect. So obviously, if you have a Thieves Guild that's against just killing your target to rob their goods, which, you know, is basically just like a bandit if you think about it, then that's a really good thing. And they tend to wipe out the competitors for the guards, because they don't want competitors. So if there's an opposing guild that comes and they start killing people, the Thieves Guild will wipe them out. But the second thing as well you have to consider is, when you have a whole bunch of different criminal factions vying for power, you kind of get more violence, not just in the society, but between the guilds. Because, like, turf wars, you know, like, this is our territory, and they'll fight against each other, or they may do something a bit less moral to get the upper hand. Like, you just have problems all around. Whereas if everyone's part of this one guild, yeah, it's bad. You don't want more thieves. Like, you know, you could have 2 groups with 50 thieves or 1 group with 100. It's still bad, but at least they kind of, you know, help to,
but what
at
if,
least it's the devil, you know. Do you know what I mean? There's not
yeah.
a new faction coming out who murders and
But
kills.
what if a counter to that was sort of like, then they kind of end up monopolizing the crime and getting too much power. Like, look what
They
happens
do.
with Maven Blackbriar. Like, she gets into the position of Jarl. If you take it over for the Imperials, she gets, you know, a bad person in position of literally the Jarl of a city. She gets a royal title.
There's definitely, yeah, I 100% agree that, I mean, they're a criminal group. I'm not like, oh, it's a good thing. They're good for society. I'm more arguing that they're better for society than a bunch of different mafia type groups fighting amongst each other and constantly causing issues over territorial lines.
In Morrowind, I think, it was the Kumonatong that Thieves Guild were fighting against.
Yeah.
So that was like an example of where there is like sort of turf war kind of stuff. And I mean, like,
And the Thieves Guild got wiped out. At least you read one of the books. It says it's a book in Oblivion, I believe, that says the Fighters Guild and the Kumonatong or whatever wiped them out.
This is my 2 cents on anything, but like, you know how we're always like, you know, let's do something like, don't do the Fighters Guild, do like, you know, the Companions or House Redoran or something interesting and like contextual to the place. It's like I find the Kumonatong far more interesting than just the Thieves Guild, and like I kind of wish if they did do it, like I wouldn't be opposed in, they will do the Thieves Guild and so on, but it would be interesting if they had like a thief crime faction like that you can be part of, like a gang or a mafia type thing.
It does bring me to think as well, another reason why the Thieves Guild is, I'll use the word preferred as well, is because they do have kind of like imperial values too, and they're like quite imperial in like their, you know, I guess their morals and their style and motifs and things like that, and their general culture tends to be kind of like imperial, versus if you have the Kumonatong and they have this huge foothold in Cyrodiil, like that's like quite a, you know, a foreign kind of criminal entity which can bring a whole host of other things that the guards there aren't used to handling.
But that's the complete reverse for Morrowind's situation, where Morrowind just had the Kumonatong and the Thieves Guild pushes in on their territory because of imperialist conquestors, you know, like who took Morrowind.
It's kind of a weird contradiction though with just like thief organizations like this, is that, you know, you can kind of paint them almost as like Robin Hood in the sense that they steal from the rich and don't steal from the poor, but at the end of the day they only care about making money really at the end of it. So it's like when you've got like the protected shadow mark, so like, you know, you can't steal from these guys because they're under our protection. It's like, well, so just about anyone can pay you for protection. So then you're not even going to be stealing from the people who you want to be stealing from anyway. Yeah. So, you know, it's they can't exactly be painted through too nice of a lens.
No, and it is filled with corruption, and that is another reason they're tolerated, because all of the people, you know, high up in the hierarchy of society, they like that they can, you know, get bribed by the Thieves Guild, and that there is this kind of like collective group of power in their province who has a bunch of pooled resources, who can be like, you know, we'll give you 1,000 gold to look the other way here and there and so on. So the people who are probably around those that can actually make a change to laws or in that area of influence, they benefit from bribes. Not saying it's good.
And you could also say it benefits, at least in the example of Oblivion, that the lowest rungs of society benefit from it because they get looked after. But that is also like quite a utilitarian sort of agreement, because like the Grey Fox and Thieves Guild will sort of get like beggars and stuff to be their eyes and ears. But it's not like, it's, do you know what I mean? It's kind of got a use to it. It's not just altruism.
It's not, yeah.
You know,
for sure. So although they'll paint it like it is just altruism.
Yeah.
But really they've just got this big network of people. And that's one of the coolest things about the Thieves Guild in Oblivion, which, I mean, you can understand why it's not as much in Skyrim, but the idea that there's not this centralized guild hall, because remember that guild hall is like at the end when you go and do the ultimate heist and kind of like unlock it. But it's just that there's so many members and people in on it. Like when you join, you meet so many people and you realize, you know, they go shadow hide you, and it's like, oh wow, you're in the Thieves Guild as well. There's heaps, and they're not just thieves, merchants, like all kinds of different people.
Yeah. It was just making me think of like, imagine playing the Thieves Guild in Oblivion, but imagine like being inside Hieronymus Lex, his eyes and so on, and like all he was doing, like I have such like a villainous sort of point of view of him, but he's actually just probably just an upstanding guy who just tried to get rid of the like biggest criminals that are around, and then like yeah. And then
it's the same when you hear the name Adamus Philida, you're like, Imperial Pig.
Yeah,
and it's like he's just a good guard trying to stop a murderous guild.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. But so outside of, I guess, the simple kind of aspects of them, like being thieves and so on, there's a few like metaphysical kind of ones. Like, I guess, like everyone would be most familiar, I imagine, with the Nightingales. So that whole function. But that's like where it's interesting that in Skyrim, Nocturnal is sort of like a blessing or giving them luck explicitly, like, and that's why the Thieves Guild is so down in the dumps right now at the time of the start of Skyrim, because the skeleton key's been taken, and so therefore the Nightingales have violated their oath. They're supposed to protect it, and as long as they protect it, you get all the luck for the Thieves Guild. But that's quite an explicit contract with the Nightingales, whereas if you are with Nocturnal, and comparison to Oblivion, where it really was just the original Grey Fox stole it from Nocturnal, and that's about it. And they all sort of like shadow hide you and like wish for luck, but it's not such a like I've made an actual contract with you. You know what I mean? It's a bit more just she's a patron of thieves, so of course we worship her. It's a little bit of a different.
She also seems to have like a degree of indifference to it being stolen as well. It almost seems like the Nightingales care a lot more than she does if her artifacts are taken. And a lot of when it comes down to, talking about whether it's a religious worship or whether it's a business relationship, she does seem very distant from it all. And at the same time, it's like the religious aspects of the Thieves Guild with the Nightingale seems a bit unusual, because when they die, their spirits will go to the Evergloam to kind of forever walk in shadows, or however they put it. But for most thieves, you'd think you like thieving because you want to get rich, you want to make a load of money and get away or whatever. What's the point in your spirit being a thief in the shadows for all time? It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me, unless
it's kind of like I guess maybe a bit like the craft or something of it, that they love the competition, because you can also look at
like
things
the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and like, so the Grey Fox is in that forever because he stole an Elder Scroll as the kind of the deal there. So it kind of, you'll go down in history for stealing something. It's kind of, but yeah,
which I still get into with Nocturnal and the Grey Cow, how it's kind of ironic that you have to kind of give up your identity in order to be the greatest thief of all time.
And the only other one the only other real thief I can think of is like the Nightingale, as in the Gallus Destinius guy that stole the staff piece for Jagar Tharn. But even that's not really like a long-standing, like super famed kind of thing. It feels weird to, I guess, like fame. Like maybe it's just a more personal sort of goal setting. It's like, I could steal from the most powerful, whatever.
For a lot of them, it's the challenge of it. It's not always everyone's in it for the riches. I mean, especially in Skyrim, you see it more like they all just want to get rich because there's kind of not that moral angle to it. So for some people, it could literally be like a moral statement in Oblivion. That's what they believe philosophically, that they can just go steal from people, give it to beggars, and then that's cool.
Eat the rich is what they're saying.
Yeah, I'm just imagining the Joker when he's got all that money and he just sets it on fire. It's like, it's all about sending a message. It's not about the money.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
don't know. I think I lean more towards the idea that for the most part, they're much more individualistic, and that's why you kind of have a select group who are very, religious about their involvement.
Yeah, well, because they can just be separate. And I mean, they even say that to you. I can remember in Oblivion, Armand Christophe saying, I don't know the exact quote, but it was something along the lines of like, you say something like collective oriented, like, where do we get started? He's like, what do you mean? Go steal stuff.
It's even like in Skyrim, like most of them aren't really even aware of Nightingales kind of beyond a myth. Like it's a real inner circle thing that are doing this, like the lower ranked thieves and stuff aren't like, oh, I want to be a nightingale one day. Do you know what I mean? They're just a collection of...
Yeah, like even when you're talking to Mercer towards the end, it's like you can kind of go down the path of saying, I'll essentially do anything for Nocturnal, and this is for her, or you can kind of just be like, I don't really care, I'm just going to kill you, or something along those lines. And he almost like respects you more for it, because he's, despite being a nightingale, is a much more individualistic character than perhaps the others are.
Yeah. I mean, look, if you've watched our Nocturnal podcast, like, you'd know my feelings on Nocturnal. I don't think she's a good person. I think she's just a kind of, undesirable master. I think there's better ones for sure.
Yeah, but she makes people simp for her, so she kind of gets around it.
Well, she's kind of confused as an entity, like, in general, especially if you look at the Khajiit elements of it, is that, she needed to be kind of beat into submission so that she realized she wasn't Namira, because she associated herself with darkness, but didn't realize she wasn't the great darkness. So she's not darkness, she's more shadows. And then, so she's kind of just whatever. She, in a way, doesn't understand herself. And as a result, not really anyone else quite understands her either.
I mean, I find... Sorry, go on. You go.
I was just going to say, and she doesn't seem to have a good hold on all of her artifacts. Things keep getting taken from her. The Eye of Nocturnal, her cowl, like, people just see the skeleton key. It just seems like she almost wants to be stolen from sometimes.
I wonder how they'll go ahead with all of the in the Elder Scrolls 6, because I know they're going to do a Thieves Guild, and they're going to probably bring up Nocturnal in some way or another. But I wonder how they'll do it now, like... And this kind of applies to a bunch of the princes, to be honest, is how they'll contextualize it now in the new game with the knowledge of Elder Scrolls Online and how they've expanded them. Because, like, Nocturnal before, like, some people get a little cranky with the change... Well, not changes, but I guess, like, additional information that how it treats Nocturnal, and makes Nocturnal seem a bit more like a bigger, more metaphysical presence, not just like, yay, thieves are my patrons. Like,
and like more conniving and self-interested than people kind of got the impression.
But for me, I think that's perfectly on brand for a thief, which is a very individualistic, I want a lot of money. Like, for her being, a patron of thieves, she's almost like a ideal to formulate yourself after, like to sort of mantle.
Which is, it's why it's kind of fitting that there's the Khajiit story of her stealing the skeleton key from Azura. It fits her perfectly, and it also fits the idea that perhaps she doesn't quite understand how powerful the skeleton key might actually be. Her willingness to let it be stolen and whatever, it will come back to her. It's kind of like, it almost does seem like sometimes she'll just steal on a whim and then let things go on a whim as well.
Yeah.
It also depends on the time scale as well. Like, we can't be in their head, I suppose. So, like, it could be that really chill, immortal thing of, like, my skeleton key was stolen. Usually that comes back to me in, like, a few human years or, like, a few decades. That's nothing. Like,
yeah. It's such a hard thing to wrap your head around. Like, if you take the idea that the gods are just experiencing everything all at once, like past, present, future, like, do you know what I mean? Like, because everything becomes, in context, this future event might not much matter to you because something past or present sort of, I mean, it's all there present, but you know what I mean.
And just another thing as well with joining the Thieves Guild and being individual, a lot of people, like any faction in real life or in games, will join it just because they want to fit in somewhere. Like, a lot of the members you meet in, like, Rune in Skyrim, it's like, why is he in the Thieves Guild? It's like, well, I don't know, where else is he going to get washed up? He literally did wash up and had a rune in his pocket with some scribble on it and doesn't know where he's from. And then, Sapphire has this horrible life. Like, there's all kinds of outcasts and downtrodden people who just, got dealt a bad hand that would end up in a guild like that. And anyone who starts trying to be a thief will get wrapped into that too. Like, in one of the stories you can read, someone starts off being a thief, they get visited from the Thieves Guild, who a member basically saying, you're going to join our guild or I'm going to break both of your arms. And it's like, it's really good if you join, and it's like that monopoly, but what else are you going to do?
Yeah. I mean, definitely, like, one of the things with the thieves, because if you actually, like, strip a lot away from like if you just look at the Thieves Guild or what it is, it's kind of, oh, it's a guild for thieves and they steal things. It's like a very like function based guild, whereas like some other guilds might have like more interesting sort of metaphysical or philosophical things about them. But the Thieves Guild, I don't know whether Bethesda intentionally does this, but they do make a lot of the characters quite stand out and good. And they do a similar thing for the Dark Brotherhood, which is really a pretty straightforward, like, you know, Sithis worshipping, we're just evil assassins kind of thing. But they put a lot of effort into creative characters and stuff. They're just characters that you would become attached to. Whereas, like, if you think about, like, the Fighters Guild or Thieves Guild in Oblivion, like, Fighters Guild or Mages Guild, there's less characters that I really, like, feel attached to by comparison. But they're obvious, like, you know, Mages Guild function characters.
Yeah, I mean, Skyrim had some really good characters. Like, everyone likes Delvin. Like, as much as he has that kind of like
Cockney English accent.
No, I was gonna say creepy old dude vibe in terms of like, you know, going and watching like Vex bathing and
he's like Fagin from Oliver Twist, kind of like, you know, the ragamuffins who steal. That's the vibe I got from Skyrim's one. At least.
Yeah. And that one Dunmer that's like, I used to be a member of the Morang Tong.
Oh, yeah.
That is such a... I don't know how that stuff gets past. Like, just... I don't know, man, but I think they should play
It is weird. I think you mentioned in one of your videos, Scott, that why would someone in the Morag Tong, which is like a very principled and like... they actually have a very strong sense of tradition, end up in the Thieves Guild? Like, it is quite strange.
Yeah.
I mean, you can always come up with
it's the same.
As to why.
There's always going to be individualist.
And there's that other character, I forget his name, but he actually, there you go. He basically joined because he was bored of the routine. He was like, I think it was like wealthy family, had this beautiful wife that he was like engaged to,
guy.
Or married to, and then he was like, I'm out.
Yeah, because he was part of a thief, like another thief gang in Valenwood, and then. You know, because he had all that, so he's kind of like living for the thrill of it kind of thing. But then when his dad found out, basically gave him like an ultimatum, and he's like, yeah, no, I'm going to go be a thief still, because living on the edge,
why would you go
Dad?
to Skyrim then?
Because, I don't know.
Worst Thieves Guild to go to. All these rumors of their bad luck, which I find the timing of it a little bit strange. If you read the books, like a book about it, and it says, you know, for decades they've been having all this bad luck and it's been gradually getting worse and worse, and you hear about like failed heists and so on. But then when you play through it and you hear from like Carlisle and you hear about Gallus and Mercer and all this, it doesn't feel like it was that long ago.
I think, do you know what? I think it actually is, because Mercer, you know, he's an older dude at this time.
It
like
was 25 years. I think.
Yeah, because remember Carlisle, they're elves, so age is different. Like they you know, Carlisle could be like 80. And you wouldn't know.
Yeah,
and
it just didn't feel like that. I know.
Yeah.
I'm saying that's what it says in the source and stuff, but like, yeah, when I actually play it doesn't feel like that. And I guess the other members around who some can seem newer, you don't know how long they've been there, and they can even mention kind of how the guild's like, you know, down on its luck, and it just feels like this like.
They did add some interesting, like even I can just think of. I don't know his name, so it's obviously not that memorable. But the guy that was the jailbreaker,
he's really cool.
Yeah, he'd get paid. Like they did make an effort with.
Like he would break in not just to escape jail, get arrested, not just to escape jail, but he'd even be sent in to like kill people in jails.
Yeah,
because he knew how to get out.
Yeah, or break them out with him.
Yeah, or like rescue people and like all kinds of stuff. Yeah, the Thieves Guild has a bunch of cool characters in pretty much, you know, all the games. They're done pretty well. And I like in Skyrim how you can kind of like expand the guild with like the different shopkeepers. And I mean, there you go. That's another reason people do join the guild. Like it's easy to say pooled resources, but if you think about like all the fences, especially actually it's in Skyrim too, they're distributed all around the place. You can go sell your stolen goods to, you get all these contacts given to you. Like there's the whole shadow mark system in Skyrim where people can leave kind of like little symbolic messages saying this is empty or this is full of loot.
One thing I wish they did there is that actually like, this is kind of what I was saying, like, but this is kind of what I was saying, like, last podcast about, like, implementing the law in the actual, like, environmental kind of things and putting it in front of the player. But, like, the shadow marks are never really... They're just, like, a little world-building piece. And, there's a few places around with it. But there's never really a situation, like, in a main quest or anything where you're, like, kind of, like... having to look for shadow marks or something like that, or they never really get used. You can play the Thieves Guild and ignore them entirely and not know about them.
Yeah.
Like, I know
But
with me I just played through the whole thing, and then I read some shadow marks book later and saw the symbol and like, oh,
But they're not just in the Thieves Guild storyline. They're in other places in the world. But yeah, the thing is, I never had a moment where I was sneaking around, saw a shadow mark, and then as designed was like, oh, I'm going to skip out on this place because it's empty. Or like, oh, I'm going to go in here because it's filled with loot. And by the way, unless like they do leave caches and stuff for members out in the wilderness who are thieves, but in general, who marks a place as filled with loot but doesn't take it? It's like,
yeah.
Oh, I went in here and there were some really good necklaces in the drawers, but I left them there.
Yeah. I wonder, because like you did the Thieves Guild compared to Skyrim versus Oblivion one, and like Skyrim has a lot of good things, but there were like obviously more of those. Like, even though like if you put it on paper, there are actually like quite both thievy sort of Thieves Guild, but there's a lot of just dungeon crawl sort of ones in Skyrim. But there is still lots of stuff. I feel like part of it is the positioning, because you can do the entire main story of the Thieves Guild and not have to do any of the sort of explicit sort of like steely kind of side job feeling stuff, whereas in Oblivion it puts you front and center. So the Thieves Guild experience is being a thief in like your staging, so you feel like you earned it, whereas you can just kind of ignore all the side stuff.
If you look at some of the fences in Skyrim, like I can remember all of the fences from Oblivion. Do you know why? Besides the fact that they were nostalgic because I was a kid, but you had to go and talk to them because you had to fence a certain amount of gold between missions to unlock the next one. Whereas in Skyrim, it doesn't really weigh on you, but you actually do unlock heaps of these cool fences, like all around the place, like Golemaya's a fence and Theory's a fence, but you just don't have to use them. And like, especially with the shopkeepers who are in the guild hall who will buy stolen goods, your incentive is quite low.
This is the other thing for a big part of the game too in Skyrim, is that just looting dungeons as a warrior or a mage or any other sort of play style is generally far more profitable anyway. If you get a pickpocket skill, there's that thing where it's like there's enchanted jewelry in their pockets all the time, and you can kind of just random civilians, so you can really crank up your wealth with that. But for the most part, it's not like you're going to be going into some guy's shop or something. There's not really that much to steal and take of big monetary value, so the incentive to steal is a lot lower. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, there's not a lot of...
It's a good example of the differences between the more religious and less religious arms of the guild, because in Oblivion you're very much being trained up, or you're proving yourself as a great thief, because the big mission towards the end is to steal something, whereas it does feel slightly more like in Skyrim. So if you prove yourself to be kind of like a formidable warrior who has stealth abilities as well, you're kind of like building yourself up to essentially be a champion of Nocturnal, as opposed to a master thief.
Well, that's actually fair. If you put like a one-liner, like what's that the storyline about? Oh, the storyline is about getting revenge on Mercer and returning the skeleton key to Nocturnal. If you compare that to the Thieves Guild, it's like, what's a storyline about? Like building your way up the ranks and doing the big grand heist, stealing something no one has ever stolen before. It's very thief-centric versus...
That is a recurring theme with Skyrim and Oblivion. I will say, at least the Dark Brotherhood does end with you killing the Emperor, whereas in Oblivion, the Dark Brotherhood just ends with, like, meeting the Night Mother in the cavern and, like, exposing the traitor. The ending's not as good, but, like, the meat of it's better. In Skyrim, the Thieves Guild is like, do Maven's little thing, and then you're quickly thrown into the internal politics and dungeon crawling with Mercer and Carlisle and the rest of it. I mean, it's the same in the Companions. Besides the Radiant quest, you go do one quest, you come back, you're in the inner circle, you're now doing the whole werewolf thing. And even in the Dark Brotherhood, you literally go and help Muri, who, by the way, I was playing last night and hearing Astrid go, I just really don't like the pronunciation, but it's Muiri or Mueri, but it was like, I was just like, really? Like, Muri just flows way better. But anyway, you do that, and then you're straight away thrown into the whole Emperor plot, where you find out you're the listener straight away, from the Night Mother literally speaks to you, and then you go off to meet Mortier in Volenrud, And then he just tells you, we're going to kill the Emperor. Here's the plan. You're going to go to the west. Like, it's all kind of
Skyrim's pretty
outlined.
rife with like pacing issues. Like, you know, it applies to the companions too, with being a werewolf after like a couple of missions, like so quick.
One mission.
Watch it. And that's the other thing. Like in the Thieves Guild example, I feel like, and a few games do this, but they're too quick to betray you. Like, you already know Mercer's gonna kind of betray you. You get that feeling, and he betrays you real quick. It's like, oh, okay. But like, I feel like betrayals are much more impactful if you kind of grow with a character, and like maybe you're actually learning to like them. Like, for example, in Oblivion, you know, the Khajiit guy that's so you know, mean to you and so on, and like insults you after every contract, for all of these contracts throughout the Dark Brotherhood storyline. But then when you're told to basically kill the entire guild as part of a purge, he's really nice to you all of a sudden. He comes around now and he's like, you know what, you are pretty cool, yada yada. That feels
and it's not cause you're gonna kill him, just to clarify.
Yeah.
It's like, no, he doesn't know.
He doesn't know, but it feels more impactful when you go, oh, now I don't really want to kill him, because he's like, oh, finally we're kind of grown together. The kind of feeling would be if you were with Mercer and you were doing some cool Thieves Guild stuff throughout it, and then, you know, later more so like the 2/3 kind of part of the playthrough, it feels like all of a sudden the betrayal's revealed, then it would feel more impactful because you kind of, you know, you like him and you don't necessarily want to, or you might kind of like, you know what I mean? Instead of just being
also,
yeah, go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, also, Brynjolf's just way too big, man. Brynjolf is just, like, he's not thiefy feeling at all. Like, I like his character. No, like, I really do. It's just funny because, like, when you're going through the ruins with him, I can't imagine have gone on, like, stealth missions with Brynjolf. He does seem like this, like, large Nord dude.
That's their kind of, like, thing. Like, everyone... And maybe thematically, I guess it's on point for Skyrim in terms of, like, land of barbarians, everyone's jacked as hell. Like, everyone's, even the skinniest people are just, you know, if you look at their muscle, they're shredded and they've got bulging traps and everything. But I really hope in the newer games they do actually have just like a muscle slide, like you can be like softer looking. I you know, dude, imagine the role-playing build potential by being able to make fat characters, bro. Some,
dude, fat
big belly
Khajiit
warriors.
Mage. Khajiit mage, like this big like sage cat, looking like Garfield with spells.
I think I'll always have a bit of PTSD when it comes to Brynjolf anyway, because when I first played, like when it first came out on Xbox 360, I never really encountered any game-breaking glitches. I got like all the achievements except for the ones related to the Thieves Guild, because Brynjolf approached me and he asked me to follow him, but he just never left. He just stood there, and the only way I could, like, I didn't have a save except for way back, so the only way to actually make it work was to just try and nudge him all the way. This was before I was using console commands to kind of do whatever I want, so I'm trying to nudge him all the way there, and then I had to eventually just give up on it, and it took me like several years before I came back to properly do it again. So
wow.
I don't like him.
Yeah. Fair enough.
I think too, the other thing too is if you have to do any of those, like with to actually become a proper master of the Thieves Guild, you've got to do all of those Radiant things. But it can actually, at least in my experience, it felt tedious because I generally did it like after I'd done the main Thieves Guild main sort of stuff.
If they shoved them in between,
and
also didn't randomize them, so you wouldn't just get like, you know, two similar jobs in a like, or let you pick the jobs. Sorry. Yeah, like if it was kind of set and each one felt a little bit less radiant, they could have been designed the same, just feel less radiant, and you kind of know like, oh, I'm fencing goods right now, like kind of going to get things to like fencing up.
I feel like it would be, I don't know, maybe I'm overstating how simple it is or something, but I feel like, you know, if you're Bethesda and the quest designers or whatever, you just go, okay, why is the player joining the Thieves Guild? To be a thief. So like, how are we going to structure the storyline so that you can be a thief? Like, that's the fantasy they're living out. In the same way that if you're living out an assassin fantasy, you want to be an assassin or a noble warrior or a mage. Like, that's why.
Well, it is funny because if you look at the Dark Brotherhood, they actually did a similar thing where they had assassination contracts on the side. At least they were spaced in the middle, which is good, but they weren't really part of the main. Like, they felt like they were designed as this kind of side thing to do. Like, you would go to Nazir, he'd give you contracts, which weren't particularly amazing, right? Like, a lot of them was like, oh, you have to kill this beggar who's sad because his sister's dead and he's in the middle of nowhere, so there's no guards who are going to catch you. and their first quest has you go off to kill Elaine Defont. Cool quest, but it may as well have just been given to you by like a Jarl. Go kill this bandit who stole this heirloom. It's not like a stealthy environment. Next quest is listening to Cicero talk to the coffin while you're in it. Like, that's a whole quest. And then you meet Mortier. That's also a whole quest.
Yeah.
Just meeting him. And then it's all into like, you know, assassinate Vittorio Vici, that kind of area next. But yeah, they do the same similar stuff in all the guilds. So
yeah, it really does feel like your reputation kind of precedes you in most of the quest lines in Skyrim. Whereas if they did have that thing where you kind of had to do a quest to steal some gold and fence some gold between missions, it could maybe feel like perhaps when there's a big job about to be done, they pick you over the other members of the guild rather than it kind of just being assumed that you're going on all these missions. It would feel more like you're kind of ascending the ranks,
and that's
rather than just being, oh, it's the Dragonborn's joined us kind of thing.
I just before you get started, Scott, I will say they did have a litany of larceny, whatever it was called, objectives in Skyrim where you could steal these extra things during their main quests in the Thieves Guild, like the Dwemer puzzle cube and like things like this. But that should have been given way more attention as like a main thing. Like, we need you to go and steal this Dwemer puzzle cube. And even with the fencing, right? Like, you may not want to steal something that's only worth 300 gold total. But if you have an objective where they're like fence 300 gold, you have those moments where you sneak into the weapons store and you take 3 steel swords, a helmet, and a set of boots, because you know you're going to go sell that to achieve the objective. It's not just, will it make me rich? Is it worth it?
Well, that's what that was. Just quickly, those that was one cool part about it, the whole Baron's Eye crown sideline and getting those little things. Like, I know I always wanted to fill out all of the side things. Like, that was a cool little addition, and they should do more of those things, and like you're saying, more focus on them. But I think overall it's like the whole idea of advancement, I feel like they really went like cinematic with it. Like, we're going to get them into the meat of the story, and that's what's cool. But like the whole mentality of a player earning something is really what makes the reward feel, earned. Like, if you create a powerful build and a powerful character, you feel like you've earned it by using your brain, combat, and leveling up in the right combination of gear and all this stuff that you've acquired and put together, and now you've got this masterpiece build. In a similar sort of way, it's like, you've built up all of this sort of advancement. Now you've kind of earned the big prize, rather than trying to like, do you know what I mean? I feel like they made it easier to, you don't earn it. It doesn't feel as earned. You don't feel like you shouldn't be the listener. You didn't earn it. Like, you shouldn't be like the harbinger. It doesn't feel earned. And to a degree in the Thieves Guild, I know they add the whole radiant side thing, but I guess maybe that's more like to become the guild master. But I guess that's more of a, it's just the problem is it's on the side.
You've got one here and one here, and it should kind of be like this.
Yeah.
Like, it's a pacing thing, and it didn't help not having ranks either.
Yeah.
Because the ranks are cool because they kind of make up part of the lore as well. Like knowing that Footpad is a rank is kind of cool. And Brynjolf even mentions that. I'm pretty sure it's the Footpad rank. He goes like, oh, despite this and that, you're better than half the snot-nosed footpads that have come through here. And it's like, so there are ranks. Why aren't I being told?
From a game design perspective too, like having that like makes a player feel good. Like in the same way that you feel good when you're level 5 or level 10 or whatever, or when you're like upping those ranks and you get a visual stimulus of like, oh, I got this back. I'm here now. It feels good when you're like, oh, I'm now a footpad, or now I'm a shadow foot. And even especially too, if they drip feed you things like, oh, now you get access to these benefits of the guild because you're a higher rank. Like how it felt in the Mages Guild when you finally get to the Arcane University in Oblivion. You're like, oh, now I'm a member, and now I get a staff, and now I get access to these different things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it should be like Call of Duty, where it just like pops up on screen that you've ranked up and you've got the guitar riff.
Yeah. But that'd be mad, bro. It'd be like Harbinger achieved.
Can't wait for the Elder Scrolls 6 Battle Pass. Wonder what's going to be on that. That'd be sick.
I don't think they will, just because I feel like it's now getting too popular to, and like to basically shit on bad consumer practices and stuff like that. So I feel like, and they're coming from a place where they've kind of got a save face now. Like if they if they do this next, they will get a lot of lashback, you know?
It all actually depends, I think, on how Starfield performs. Like, if Starfield actually just is, let's just hope and pray, like some 10 out of 10 game, right? Like, or 9 out of 10, right? And everyone loves it. And then they put in some things you can buy and people don't really mind because the game's really good. Then Bethesda will just think, well, as long as Elder Scrolls 6 is good,
dude,
I can do this and that.
I can be entirely like, if I'm being like completely and entirely honest, and this isn't a good consumer practice thing, but I can see how people like how it's successful, because if a game's really, really good, I don't care if they put in things, because I'm just like, and it's like they will feed me DLC for, you know, it's $30, a third of the price of the game, but it's only like equivalent to, you know, 1/10 or less of the game in terms of like, you know, value. But I'll be like, yes, more good stuff. I love it. And I know that's such like a consume more kind of thing, mentality, but it's just too true in the way all it's got to be is good. The worst thing is when it's bad. If it's bad,
it's purely how it's delivered. Like, as you said, if you're giving me more of this good thing, I'll pay for it. It's just so long as they don't give you a smaller portion of pie and like, here's the rest of your pie, $20. You know, so long as it's not like that, there's really nothing wrong with it.
And that is what's dangerous about Elder Scrolls games specifically, or RPGs in general. And that's why I really don't want it at all, is like you said in your video, Drew, like ages ago, anything they put in a store could be in the game as something to find, whether it's on a quest, buy from a shopkeeper, you know what I mean? Like, they're assets that could be in the world already. It depends what it is. I'm most open to DLC. Like, if they're like, here's this whole Soulstime thing, oh, hell yeah. give me unlimited of that and I'll be happy because I love the game.
Calling it an expansion is better because it insinuates that you're expanding on what's already there, you know, and that's why it should come later. Whereas DLC is kind of like, you know, it's obviously not intentional, but it's kind of a Weasley way to be like, there's no reason to not have this immediately. It's downloadable content. As long as you're downloading it, you know, it's extra content. But it's like, no, expand on the whole. Give us something, you know, to begin with, and then add to it.
Yeah. See, this is the real like meta conversation. We're talking about the Thieves Guild, and we're talking about the real thieves, the corporation stealing our We deserve these DLCs as part of the game for the full price. They're stealing from us, the little Weasley thieves. Foot pads, all of them. Yeah. Maybe they're in a deal with Nocturnal.
Maybe. Although they haven't been having the best luck lately. Sounds like someone stole the skeleton key.
Todd lost the skeleton key.
Yeah, couldn't be me.
It's all going south. I don't know how much else there is to really talk about on the Thieves Guild.
I think you'd end up going through a lot of the cool characters because, I mean, there are a lot of cool characters, but that's the thing. It would just become like, it's kind of like analysis.
Let's just list all the characters, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I will say I like Delvin, and I really like that he has all those tie-ins to the Dark Brotherhood, and also that if you think about it, he's kind of responsible for like, this might be an exaggeration to say half, but like heaps of the members in the Thieves Guild having joined because they knew him from somewhere.
Actually, here's a final comment, and I think is a good, like, since we're on the topic of expansions and DLCs, like good, like, expansion design, I think, is when it feels interlinked with the original thing. It's not just a side. Like, I do like the side thing, but little things to call back. And with the whole Glover Mallory, his brother, being on Raven Rock, and then you got the revelation about Sapphire, you know, him being her father. Like, that was just like cool tie-ins that helped just connect the DLC to the setting of the larger world. So
that was really cool. Yeah. For those who don't know, Sapphire is the brunette chick you often see walking around Riften, who's quite aggressive, and she was born on like a really poor pig farm, got raided by bandits, and then her dad ended up leaving before that happened, and then he's on Solstheim kind of like hiding his shame.
Talking about the Thieves Guild morality, like Sapphire is an example. When you walk into Riften and there's a dude, and the Red Guard guy is like, oh, my shipment's been stolen. I'd like, you know, and then Sapphire is basically like, oh, well, maybe you should have kept a better eye on her, or security or something like that, because she stole the shipment that he knew that he was trying to get to her to pay her debts. And it's just like, you scum. Like, it's actually the most scummy sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Not to stick up for it, but you can see a lot of those characters why that they're like that when you hear about their upbringing.
Yeah.
Like hers was bad, like really, really, really bad. Not
Yeah.
saying I'm not excusing it. I'm just like it. I mean, it's character. It's
Yeah.
that's her character. You know,
Yeah,
Well, it's
you know
just
why
it's
she's
just
like
another
that.
of the reasons why they wouldn't steal from the poor, because the poor make such good recruits for the Thieves Guild inherently. You know.
And here's the plot twist: don't steal from the poor. You can't. That's why they're poor. What would you steal, right?
Yeah.
The rich are the good targets anyway. If you take morality out of the equation completely, of course you would target the rich.
I mean, unless
Yeah.
you're just doing it for the thrill, like some of the thieves, where you know, if you steal a rag off of a poor person, then you know you're probably going to get. It matters more to them than the jewel does to the rich merchant.
Yeah. So what a thrill. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's not a thrill. It sounds way more of a thrill to do like the ultimate heist kind
Steal
of
the
thing.
rags off his back.
Yeah, whoa.
Yeah.
I'm not condoning anything. I'm just trying to get inside the minds.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're being criminologists
I
in this
get-
podcast today.
I guess at the end of the day, it's don't steal, be good to your neighbor, and the Thieves Guild are all shill hacks. Don't listen to them. They're just trying to recruit you for their own ends.
It's a pyramid scheme.
Yeah.
But Nocturnal is worth it, so you might as well join up.
Oh. All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching. We'll probably have a longer podcast next time, I think.
Well, there, if we Houses of Morrowind, I think. Yeah.
Oh, is that next?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
so
anyway,
it'll be-
thanks for tuning in. Social media links are in the description below, and we'll see you next time.